Good morning. Sorry about that. Had an echo and had to figure out where it was. Good morning, CJ. Uh, good morning, Andrew. And good morning, Rowdy Riles. And really quick, CJ, as a member, gotta properly greet ya.
Bring out the off. Bring out the off. Bring out the off.
And enough champagne to fill the Nile.
You can't see it, but I did in fact do the motions of gesturing toward the Nile behind me being full of champagne in honor of Gal Gadot. Gal. Anyway, good morning, Payne. Lovely to see you. I hope you are well. Anyway, we're here today to color some Golden Girl. I started this page a while ago, and it's just in my folder of stuff. So it's at the top, but I'm not going to work on this one today. Couple sort of odds and ends as far as Golden Girls, and I'm just wearing a basic, just because of the sweater, just wearing a basic hand thingy. So I thought I would start with the chariot race. It's 2 pages, so I doubt I will finish this today. And if for some reason I do, we'll do the boring city where Golden Girl and the Guardians rule. So, but I doubt we will get beyond the chariot race because 2 pages, lots of space. But yeah, so how is everyone? I hope you're all having a glorious weekend. Mine has been okay. Busy, but okay. And so, between trying to make content and get the studio set up finally, it's been a busy couple of days. And I might be going up to Portland next weekend. So if I do, there's other stuff I've been trying to get done. So if Portland does happen, the house does not fall apart while I'm gone. So, because that means leaving Matt with 7 cats. And they are at the stage where they are currently a handful. So, in the best way, but still a handful. So, yeah. Anyway. So, yeah, some Golden Girl. And that's what people voted on. I put several options up. It was open to everyone. It wasn't just a members only thing. I think CJ is the only member here yet. So I know you have voted already, but there is a members only poll for the next members only flip through video. So if you have not voted, go vote. So I'm going to take that down after the stream today. And then film whatever has the most votes as of today. So. But yeah, so, and now we're just doing a really boring brick wall. I'm using sand because, you know, at the time of Golden Girl, that's what the bricks probably would have been made out of. Technically, Golden Girl is supposed to be set like during Earth's Middle Ages, or like whenever it was we had barbarians or what have you. I always color it as if it's on a different planet, sort of like Eternia. It's way more interesting that way. You do extra planets in the sky, but I do try to keep the original aesthetic. To a degree, except when it comes to like making the sky purple and putting extra planets up there. The coloring books are also really interesting to me because they were published in 1987, but the toy line was canceled in late 1985. And then there was an abbreviated Wave 2 that was basically just repaints and new box art that was released in Europe for Golden Girl. And publishing of the coloring book would have been, it's much quicker and easier to publish a coloring book than it is to actually get a toy line out, which was part of what Kenner did whenever they first got the Star Wars license. They really quickly pumped out sort of coloring content. Because, like you do the drawing and then you get it sent to the printer, and then they slapped it into their dip dot sets, which were already an existing form factor, as well as their plates poster sets. And then in Canada and like England and Europe, they release coloring books. Because it's really quick turnaround. You get the art, you get it printed. You can do that in, a couple months. Whereas toys take like 8 months to a year. And so it's really odd that the Golden Girl coloring books did not come out till like 1987, which was around the time She-Ra had been canceled. It's possible that they did it primarily to secure the trademark, because this was at the time that the Golden Girls was on TV, so it's possible they went in to secure it. It's also possible that there is some evidence, but no proof yet, that they were planning an animated series based on one commercial that had a cartoon in it. And I think if you go to Janessa J. Champagne's channel, she has either a link to, or she has a video with the commercial in it that has animated. And the style of the coloring book is not the toys, it's the actual animation models that were used in that commercial. So I'm wondering if the coloring book was part of trying to keep the brand out there while they figured out a coloring book, figuring maybe they could bring the toys back if there was a cartoon. Or it could have just been the Leisure Products Inc. trying to keep the trademarks in place by creating some product, so that if NBC decided to release Golden Girl action figures, it wouldn't be easy. But I mean, we're just now getting Golden Girl toys, so I don't imagine Golden Girls, the TV show with the old women. When I say that, and I think most of those old women are like my age. It's just people aged quicker and differently in the 70s, 80s, and even the 90s. So, anyway, let's see. Of course you are. Of course you're still hungover, Andrew. Why wouldn't you be? Yeah, the cartoon looked really cool. So, and I mean, it's not unheard of that perhaps, like a lot of the original Golden Girl toys sat in KB until like 1990. So it's not entirely impossible that, and if you're wondering, speaking of also, if you're wondering about the unreleased Wave 2 and the concepts, Andrew has videos on those over on his channel. So definitely check that out if you have not. There is not a lot of Golden Girl content out there. I find out every time I try to do more research. And my channel, and Andrew's channel, and Janessa J's channel are like up in the top of the searches. It's like, oh no, we've inadvertently become the experts. Just because there's so little out there. I've made some requests because Galoob was purchased by Hasbro. So in theory, any concepts are properties that Galoob owns, Hasbro now owns. I've not gotten definitive information back as to whether or not Hasbro owns Golden Girl or not. My guess is it's not as simple because it was sort of developed by the same company that Leisure Concepts Inc., who developed the Thundercats. And they developed Thundercats for Ruby Spears. Because there is the animation floating around, I wonder if it was developed for an animation studio, which would mean even if Hasbro, because of Galoob, owns the rights to make toys for it, they have like trademarks and the toy license. They may have that, but if some animation studio or TV studio owns it, they would still have to pay royalties. And frankly, for something like Golden Girl, those kind of royalties may not be worth much. I mean, they may not be worth what they would make. You know, we all know Hasbro's not in the business these days of taking risks with new properties. They license even their own stuff out to let other companies sort of take the risk with product and then just make their licensing fees. And it seems like with stuff like, you know, FOMO Toys is doing sort of Galaxy Warriors and a bunch of sort of the Motu knockoff brands these days. It seems like if it were as easy as licensing it out, that we might, you know, Boss Fight Studios, you know, they're doing Conan and Red Sonja stuff. It just seems like somebody would have licensed it out from Hasbro if it was as straightforward as Hasbro owns it. But like I said, I've asked around. And the fact that I didn't get a clear, straightforward yes or no answer immediately, to me, does sort of suggest that it's not straightforward and cut and dried. It could very well be that Hasbro doesn't know if they own it or not, and they have to do research into it. So, we'll see. As soon as I get definitive answers, I'll obviously share for the 17 people in the entire world who care. And I think at least half of us are here in chat right now. So, yeah. Let's see. And hello, Oz. Good morning. Lovely to see you. And I hope you're having a great time with Connor. Sorry I did not make Clubhouse last night. Super busy. And hello, Alex. Lovely to see you. Mint with card. Oh, and this is true. We've got 2 members. So, sorry, Andrew. You know what we do when members come around.
Bring out the off. Bring out the off. Bring out the off.
And enough champagne to fill the Nile.
Yeah, that's right. Gal Gadot. Exactly. Yeah, there were definitely some commercials. Also, if you at all went into KB toy stores from like 1985 to 1990, there were walls of Golden Girl toys. I often remember seeing them sort of at the tail end of my toy collecting. And they were like $1.99 at KB toy stores, and I you know, remember thinking, oh, I should get some now, and then being like, I'm not really doing toys anymore. And obviously now I kind of kick myself for not picking them up, because at that age, I don't know that I would have even opened them. Probably would have sat, they'd probably be in a box right now, waiting for me to unpack them. I did find the 3 mint and box Golden Girl things though that I do own, and set them aside until I get to that shelf. So, if you are following me on Instagram, you are seeing some of the photos as I put stuff together. Last couple of weeks, it was all the She-Ra stuff. Now I'm working on the Annie stuff and some of the Star Wars shelves. Once I've got it mostly together, I'll do a video for people who aren't on Instagram. I'm on Blue Sky, but I don't, it's not as, like, photos aren't as don't get necessarily the same push on there that they do elsewhere. And so I haven't really shared a lot over there. But eventually I'll get it figured out. I mean, I definitely prefer Blue Sky to Twitter, but I also didn't share a lot of photos on Twitter back in the day. So I am pretty much using Blue Sky the way I used to use Twitter. Before Grimes' ex-boyfriend turned it into a hellscape of bots. Yeah, it was also just kind of like, I went really hard into comic books and into music when I finally stopped doing toy. Like 1987 was like the last time I bought toys, and that was like my first year of. I was like I think in 8th grade. I think my first year. We were in a small area where there was no middle school. It was like elementary school and then high school. So it was like my first year sort of at high school, even though it was technically middle school. That, like I got, Natasa was the last actual toy I bought, as, before I stopped, and that, that's a really cool toy to sort of end your toy collecting on. One of the hard to find Wave 3 Princess of Power things that I still have, and it's one of the most expensive ones, so it was a good last purchase of the toy. But I was kind of okay with it, honestly, for a couple of years there. Like I said, I went really hard in music and comic books, so like, $10 in toy, like about at that, which is when I consider how much $10 was worth at that time. It's just my dad was making really good money at that point in time. But yeah, my parents would spend like 10. Well, they would give us $10, and then they would probably spend about 10 to 12 more. So we had an allowance plus they were buying stuff. My parents were not good with money. So they would spend a lot of money, but we didn't have a lot of savings or anything. It was very much hand to mouth for a really long time there. Even when he was making really good money, we would go and they would spend lots and lots of money. My mom would also sort of stockpile the money so that at Christmas they could draw all this money. Especially on years where we would go like spend with family so that we would have a Eternia, in the Hive playset from Sectars, and it's kind of how my aunt that we all sort of still dislike to this day, that was part of sort of showing her up, was that we were all spending Christmas together. The tree was stacked with toys. And like my brother and I both had our own individual CD players at a time where CD players were super expensive. Every year for Christmas, they would get us new stereos for a couple years there. So, I mean, that's, like it would be that one all-in-one box where you have the two cassettes, the CD player, the record player, the FM stereo. So not like super nice. But every year we would get a new one with all the new bells and whistles. So spoiled. So I didn't necessarily miss toys though, because I was, basically $20 a week and 45s and cassette singles and CDs and comic books. you know, and a stack of $10 comic books. It's like all the brand new stuff because comics are still like 75 cents to $1 brand new, and then back issues for like $2. I have a nice stack that I could read over and over for the whole rest of the week, and all the music and, you know, Stephen King and V.C. Andrews books, and, you know, I was sort of relieved in a weird way that the toy thing was over because it meant more books, music, comic books, and then we hit the year. Then it became problematic though whenever I really got into clothes. It's like, well, now you need clothes and you need jewelry and you need to spend lots and lots of money on hair gel so that your bangs are really high. So yeah, it was kind of okay for me when toys ended because it meant everything else I had more money for. So. And hello, welcome Fiction Fan 99. Yeah, I think you know, I moved out, so my mom was really the push for Christmas. So when she passed, our Christmases, even long distance, she would still, I would get a big package every year. And they would be like, they would bake Toll House cookies and they would send those, and sort of little petite fours from like the Pepperidge Farm. I mean, not the oh gosh, it was the big giant meat log place that they have at Christmas time. I can't remember what the name of it. It's not Pepperidge Farm. But yeah, anyway, she would, you know, they would stop there and they would have like these sets with like little petite four cakes and meats and cheeses, and I would get like, she would send those. She would buy stacks of sort of like little, like the last Christmas before she passed, I got this big box and it had some Star Wars Clone Wars coloring books and like some Star Wars stickers, and sort of, you know, every time she would go to like Dollar Tree or Walmart or whatever, if she would find some like He-Man and She-Ra stuff or strawberry shortcake or whatever, she would pick it up and then just send me a big box at Christmas and then another one for my birthday. And so, despite my mother's flaws, which there were many, she was pretty good at stuff like that. She's very good at getting the commercial side of, you know, she is terrible about saying she loved people and acting, you know, like a loving mother, but she was really good when it came to buying new stuff to show her love through material items. Yeah, and then and she'd send me all these cakes and sausages and then tell me how fat I was. So it's, you know, mixed messages there, Mom. I can't all scarf and barf like you do, Mom, anymore. And so, no, my mom was a boomer, and she had every flaw that the boomer generation had and has. And so, I miss her, but I also don't miss her. So, sort of that weird thing when your parent is not always the best parent. Well, this is the first time I've done a double page spread live. No, that's not true. I did. There was that GoBot page one that I still haven't finished. We need to do a whip live stream this month and work on a bunch of the half-finished pages I have, because there are quite a few. So And this will probably end up being one of them because it's a pretty ambitious page to try for a 2-hour stream, but hey. You gotta give you guys something entertaining for 2 hours, right? Talk about old properties, unpack my family trauma, obsess about my eating disorder, just typical. This is what it's like hanging out with me in person, except with far fewer cuss words. Hello, Largo. Yeah, I loved that's again. It's those little things you miss when your parents pass. There's a big part of it, but there are also those little things like, the big box of like meats and cheeses. And when I first moved to Oregon, I was super broke. I moved up here with a bunch of money I'd made from the .coms, because I worked in .coms. And every time a .com would go under, I would get like a severance. So I would, mostly set it aside. So when I first landed in Oregon, I had a pretty sizable nest egg, which meant I didn't work as often and as much as I should have in the beginning. And I would just quit jobs if I hated them. And then the money ran out and things were tight. So that big box of meat and cheeses, that was a great gift, because with those and 10 to 15 bucks in extra grocery money, that was all of my food in January. And then I could still pick up some toys and comic books, priorities, as it were. I think that the thing with that, at least as far as I explained to my therapist, no matter how bad financially it is for me, if I can still, scrape to find a cool action figure or a toy or a book or a comic book or whatever, some little pleasure, the poverty of it did not feel quite as awful. That's why I get so, I'm going to call it angry, but get so frustrated when people act like, especially right now. I mean, right now in the United States, there are a lot of people who have some food security issues this month. Food insecurity issues. And I've seen a lot of videos on social media where they're like, well, if you're on food stamps, your kids don't need a birthday cake. And it's like, that's just shit. Like, people deserve pleasures in life, no matter how poor they are. Like, if you're on food assistance and you have SNAP, I don't care. Get what you need to eat. Feel full, feel satiated. There was a brief time where I was on SNAP benefits, and you don't get a lot if you don't have kids. But I got decent, because at the time I was unemployed, drawing unemployment. The job market sucked. You don't get a lot, but what I would do is every month I would buy the cheapest stuff I could find all month, and then at the end of the month, I basically would sort of budget it so that at the end of the month there was like 50 bucks in benefits left. And then I would get like a nice cut of meat, some nice potatoes, some nice mushrooms. And make myself a really nice dinner. Sometimes I would get shrimp if the shrimp were on sale. And I remember one of the times I did that, the lady checking me out was like, it must be nice. And I basically was like, yeah, it must be nice. At least I have my teeth. And anyway, she did not appreciate that. But she didn't need to be digging in my life. Because literally the rest of the month I was making I bought flour and salt, and I would make the most flavorless, sad little pancakes you can imagine. Cheapest cuts of ground beef, just so that that one meal could be super fancy. And then I got a better job that paid well, and things kind of got back to normal. But it was a rough couple of months, and I definitely didn't need that bitch being a bitch. And especially when her teeth looked like that. And she with a full mouth of teeth throw the first stone, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So. Yeah, she is kind of like She-Ra. What's interesting is, I think it, like if you weren't sort of around at the time, you would think that she was a knockoff of She-Ra, or but at this, like in the late 70s, early 80s, like pop culture did there was this big boom of sort of like fantasy, sci-fi, barbarian stuff. It sort of started, I think the biggest would have been like Conan. And then, He-Man sort of spun out, was not based on Conan, but was obviously inspired sort of by some of the pop culture that had sprung up because of Conan. And that's sort of, like He-Man was selling a lot of money, and really super popular. And like Mattel was working on sort of She-Ra the spinoff, and Galoob purchased from Leisure Concepts Inc., or had them develop the Golden Girl concept, which is just basically like, I bet girls would like to play with barbarian toys too that have fashion, and you can comb their hair. So it was more, so it was just kind of what was happening in pop culture at the time. Barbarian stuff was just popular. I would assume that if the Red Sonja movie had come out like a year sooner, we probably would have got some Red Sonja action figures. But she hit right as sort of, the movie anyway hit right as She-Ra and Golden Girl were sort of tapering out. Golden Girl tapered out really quick. It didn't even last a full year. Essentially, it was crushed by She-Ra. And I think, I think a lot of people who prefer Golden Girl like it because Golden Girl was a little bit more swords and sorcery. It was a little bit like one of the storybooks I have actually shows like Golden Girl using her sword to draw blood. Like there's actual blood in the storybook. So she was a little bit more hard sci-fi than even He-Man. I mean, hard fantasy than even He-Man was at the time. And I think it's, but it was geared toward little girls at the time. So I think it was just sort of, Golden Girl went a little bit harder and was a little bit harder of a sell considering who the audience for Golden Girl was at the time. Whereas She-Ra had sort of the fantasy element. Outside the cartoon went way more with sort of the evil horde, but a lot of the early She-Ra storybooks and stuff that were produced before the cartoon was quite moved along was a lot more fantasy. And Golden Girl was just a lot harder fantasy than that. I think it didn't quite land because it's a little bit more action, a little bit harder, a little bit bloodier than your average, 5 to 12-year-old girl was looking for at the time. For me, I remember not being as drawn to them as I was She-Ra because they were a little bit taller, they were a little bit they weren't as pretty as She-Ra. I know that may not be the most popular thing to say, but She-Ra was all, everyone was pretty, and there was a lot of sparkly hologram stickers, and it was way more girl fantasy than Golden Girl was. Golden Girl was harder, it wasn't as soft. So, you know, they seem alike, but they're really two different beasts and sort of two different ways of looking at it. What I have noticed about sort of the coloring books is it does soften it a little bit and does turn it a little bit more into sort of the She-Ra realm. There's sort of more tricking, you know, like Dragon Queen spends more time sort of trying to trick Golden Girl, and there's not as much blood. So I think they tried to soften it, but you know, at the point of this, the toy line was dead, and at that point, if the toy line is dead, there's no way they're going to actually do a cartoon. You sort of had to have both at this point. You had to have a toy line for the cartoon, and you had to have a cartoon for the toy line. And by 1987, Golden Girl had neither. So, but they released these three coloring books. Well, 2 coloring books and an activity book. Definitely more barbarian for Golden Girl. Yeah, Galoob did a lot in that capacity. You would think, but the toys, of course, were marketed. I mean, at the time in the 80s, like once you were 12, pretty much you were expected to be like a young adult now. Like, it's not like now where toys are just kind of eternal, like depending on who you are. Like in the 80s, there was this line, and before even in the 70s, but I wasn't really alive for that. But I was, you know, of the age in the mid 80s where it's like once you hit 12, like the timer on how much longer you could play with toys was really hardcore. So like gearing the toy line to older kids, and it's kind of what it feels like they did. So really bad marketing. Hello, Stu. Welcome. Thank you for popping in. Lovely to see you. Yeah, the evil barbarian and Golden Girl was Ogra. And then there was the good barbarian Prince Chroma. So yeah, they're pretty, yeah, no. Yeah, definitely, you know. And then their shields were made of like die-cast metal that you could wear as like a pin if you were so inclined. Yeah, it's a cool toy line. The 3 of them that I have that are I say mint in box because I have opened them to take them out. They were mint in sealed box when I bought them, but I'm just like, no, I'm gonna open these and check them out. But they're really cool. They're well made. Again, I think it's timing. I think it was a little bit. I think it would be if they had debuted Golden Girl and you know now in this day and age, even though it's a little bit harder, a little bit more bloodthirsty. I think now it would just, you know, kids have entirely different sensibilities. You know, this would have dropped in the middle of like Chipper Gore and the, you know, advisory labels going on records and PG-13 being created because some movies were too violent for PG and so it was a time where people were really sort of viewing differently what kids should and shouldn't see. And I don't necessarily disagree with record label, you know, what labels being put on records to advise you of the content. And I don't even necessarily disagree with PG-13. I think I think what, even at the time, what I disagreed with was sort of the fact that it, to a degree, absolved some parents of having to proactively interact with what their kids were interacting with. Like, the record labels came about because Al and Tipper Gore bought their kids the Prince album Purple Rain, and they walked in while they were listening to Darling Nikki, and that's very much not a song that your 12-year-old should probably be listening to. And I think their daughters were even younger at the time, maybe. Either way, definitely not a song for kids, right? And of course, Chipper and Al are outraged. Oh my God. But it would have never happened if Chipper and Al had taken time to listen to the album before they gave it to their kids. So I appreciate a warning label. I think it's great to have it to help with guidance. But at the same time, you should probably, my opinion is to this day, you should listen to the album before you give it to your young children. I mean, point blank. Like, when people complain, oh, my kid saw this thing on YouTube, it's like, well, why was your kid watching YouTube without any sort of guidance? Because I do know my godson, like, his parents were really good about sort of setting boundaries with them. And he would, when I would watch him and he would watch YouTube, if something came up that, like, he wasn't supposed to watch, he would change. He'd be like, oh, I'm not supposed to watch stuff like this. And they were really good about raising him with boundaries and, like, not being a jerk about it, though, because when you just tell kids, oh, well, you can't watch it because, they would actually just break it down. It's like, this particular thing is probably a little bit too intense for you. When you're older, you can watch it, but right now you're 6. And so they just spent a lot of time explaining to him why it was important for him to not watch certain stuff when he was 6 or whatever. And setting the expectation when you're older, like, you'll be ready for this. So, like, I think he even had a playlist on his YouTube. And this was before YouTube had, like, sort of the kids' YouTube. This was around the time they started doing, or it was about a year or two before they started doing all of that. But he had a play. I don't know. I don't really talk to him a lot because we live quite a distance these days. But I do know for a long time he had a playlist on his YouTube of stuff to watch when he was older. And I do remember on his 7th birthday, he went through the list and found all of the stuff that he was like, I'll watch this when I'm 7. He went and watched a bunch of that. So, but it's been like 10 years now. So I'm going to assume that he's no longer interested in some of that stuff. But, again, they did a really good job of sort of not just saying you can't watch it, you're too young for it, but really breaking down what the content was, why they didn't feel like he was ready for it, and sort of treating him like he was smart. And I get, a lot of people with jobs and stuff, like, it's hard to do that, but you have to make that kind of time for your kids. So I don't have kids. I know people are like, that's easy to say, but that's why I don't have kids, because I know I don't have the capacity to always make time for what they need. So I'm a great godparent and the terrible aunt that gives your kid too much candy and says, like, you're 12, let's watch Friday the 13th. You're ready for it. And then they have nightmares when they come home and then I'm a bad person. But that's okay, that's my job. So. Yeah, and see, there's also, like, I grew up in a super, super religious area where there's a lot of stuff people weren't allowed to watch, that it was strictly just because people were afraid the devil was going to get their kids, and it's like, that's really stupid. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for parents who use like the devil will get you if you watch or listen to this, because that teaches your kids to not be smart. And this is exactly true. Like you can't. Um, but you could stick a label on there to say this record is for 18, like 13 plus, because it has these issues with it, and the parents can look at it when they're buying something for their 12-year-old to be like, yeah, maybe not. But 14 people buying their own music, that's completely, yeah, it's going to definitely make something not as good sell better because it's got the warning label on it. But at the same time, if you take the time to break stuff down for your kids are not going to just buy something because it has an advisory label on it. I mean, those labels 100% did help with marketing because they were just so like, this is bad for kids. Instead of being like, like, there are a bunch of cuss words on here, or, I like how they do the ratings now for like movies and TV shows where it just breaks down why it's rated R. Like, I opt out of stuff sometimes. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to watch that today. As I get older, I find with my sensibilities, there's not anything I don't watch. Like I don't, but like there are days where, depending on where I'm at with my eating disorder, I don't want to watch, a movie that has those elements in it because I don't have the fortitude that day. Or if there's like essay or, certain types of violence. Just, today's not the day for that, but I don't avoid it altogether. I know my limits and avoid the stuff that is going to make me have a bad time on those days. But I don't think there's anything personally that I would, like, oh my God, it's too violent, or it's too this, or it's too that. So yeah, I mean, but again, I'm also pretty, and also, like my parents also were terrible about, like we had cable and my parents would just let me rent stuff at the video store and let me watch stuff, not stream it. So I definitely was subjected to stuff as a really young kid that I probably shouldn't have seen. So, I don't know. Like, it's also not a black and white issue because every kid is different. Some kids can watch sort of violent content and not be really affected by it, and then others can't. Again, it's really where the parents have to be, and again, I had boomer parents, so boomer parents weren't super involved that way. Boomer parents like are involved when they needed to be, and being whatever their definition of needed to be is. But I absolutely would go outside during the summer at like 6 a.m. and not wander home until like dark. We lived, and at the time we lived in Louisiana in the marshes. Like there were days where I would have to, I would hop over little canals and stuff, and with alligators swimming by under. Like I literally could have been eaten by alligators some days, and my parents wouldn't have noticed until, when I didn't show up for dinner. So my parents could have been more involved. I don't know that it would have helped me any, but they could have been. I mean, I was just complaining earlier about some of my mom's involvement, so would it have been any better? I don't know. But again, it's a nuanced conversation. I was fine because I was pretty self-motivated, and have a pretty intense survival instinct, but I have friends who are just dumb as dirt. That like any day they would wander out and not get eaten by an alligator or not get run over, like try to cross the highway at the wrong time and end up like that kid from Pet Cemetery, like was in and of itself a small miracle. And so every kid's different. You just gotta know your kid. There's no one way to raise kids. There's no one way to like interact with all people. We are all different, unique snowflakes. Every person is different. So the best thing to do is to know yourself and operate for yourself from like a place of self-care, and then interact with people and figure out, or don't. And there are a lot of people I do not interact with on purpose because they suck. But yeah, I think stickers and advisories and whatnot are a handy tool, but they shouldn't absolve people of being involved with what their kids are doing. I know it seems like I'm spending a lot of time on the ground, but I am, but that's what I like doing. Yeah, it just happens sometimes, I never started watching that, and it's because I read descriptions of it. I was familiar with it, and it's just, I personally don't. I'm really specific about my superhero stuff, and I don't like dark. I don't like gritty. Like, I enjoyed Alan Moore's Watchmen, because it's very meta. Even in 1985, we weren't calling it meta, but there was a meta-ness to it. I don't like that after Watchmen, everyone took Watchmen as an excuse to do a lot of gritty. I don't think the sort of realistic lens works well for superheroes. I think a lot of what I don't like about superhero movies sort of becomes when people try to make them more realistic. I know I've stopped reading a lot of comic books because people keep trying to make it realistic. I don't need realism in comics. I need the fantasy of it. I like DC. Like, Superman should always be bright and cheerful and hopeful. Batman can be a little dark and gritty, but at the end of the day, Batman is a hopeful character. You don't get up every day and put on that costume and go fight crime because crime took your parents from you and made you a dark person if you don't have some measure of hope. Otherwise, you would just give up and let society collapse. Batman is a hopeful character at his core, and too many people lose sight of that with Batman. He's dark, he's gritty, but at the same time, his core character trait is hope. So anytime there's a superhero show or whatever where it's just gritty, it's dark, it's grim, it doesn't work, because I don't think superhero in general is a sort of genre that should be dark and gritty. It should always lead with hope. No matter how dark and gritty the story gets, it should have a hopeful note at the end. And even Alan Moore kind of got that with Watchmen. It still ends sort of hopeful. It's sort of a downbeat hopeful, but there's hope at the end of Watchmen. And for boys, I can't. And every time I hear stuff that's going on in boys, I'm like, that doesn't appeal to me. So I don't enjoy sort of the darkness. I don't enjoy any of that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, I think it's pretty different. So No, I like superheroes to be superheroes. You know, like if I wanted to watch like real people, you know, I'd watch The Real World or whatever. So I don't know. Like like Matt, my significant other. Um, it's weird when you're in your 50s trying to figure out what to call the person in your life. When you're specifically, like not married. But anyway, Matt watches. He quite enjoys it, but we've got different sensibility. We just don't watch that. I like Peacemaker though, and Peacemaker kind of has some of those elements in it. But at the end of the day, for me, Peacemaker still has like some hope to it. It's still like a hopeful superhero story. It's really dark humor along the way. Like I know when I say this, some people kind of gasp, but like Frank Miller's The Dark Knight, I don't care for that. I didn't care for it when it came out. I've reread it a couple times over the years to see if I've, as I get older, as I mature, as I learn more of the world, tastes change, sensibilities change. But if anything, I've disliked Frank Miller's Dark Knight even more the older I get. It's too cynical. And I get that's kind of like Frank Miller's sort of outlook, and that's fine, but I don't think Batman is a cynical character. I think when you create a cynical Batman, it turns into that, and then we get Batman movies I don't enjoy. So yeah. Anyway. Superheroes, yay. Yeah, that's the one. The one from like 1985, 86. I read it when it came out. I was like 11 or 12 when I read it the first time. And then I reread it like in my 20s, then my 30s. I've not reread it in the last 10 years. I think the last time I reread it was like 2013. And I kind of was like, I don't think this will ever hit for me, so I'm good. Uh-oh, did I miss Kenzo? Hello, Kenzo. Sorry, Andrew, wherever you are, but Kenzo is a member, so you know what we got to do now?
Bring out the off. Bring out the off. Bring out the off.
And enough champagne to fill the Nile.
There we go. All right. Good to see you, Kenzo, and I hope things are going well at the Mattress City. I know that's not the name of it, but we'll just call it Mattress City. Kenzo is the mattress king of Colorado, y'all. Go buy a mattress if you're in Colorado. Isn't that how you say Colorado when you live there? Colorado? Alright, there we go. I think we can be done with the ground now. I'm gonna do we'll do the dust clouds. But yeah, but also like, if you like those things, I don't care. I'm glad you found stuff you like. It doesn't make my life worse or better that people like that stuff. It's just not for me. Contrary to me just sort of ranting and complaining about all of it for like the last 10 minutes, it may sound differently, but I really like. For a while, I thought about doing some, like comic book content like you see on the YouTube. And then I was like, yeah, but I just don't want to complain about stuff I don't like. So, you know, nobody's going to watch that in the comic book stuff. Comic book content has to include the ranty, like how terrible everything is. And it's just, it's not, it's easy to complain about how terrible it is. But life is short and there's so much good stuff. And, you know, not sort of vibing with a lot of modern comics just means I can reread the stuff I like and enjoy that. And there are always back issues, like always. So I don't sort of get, I get it because people click on it and they watch it, but just anytime I watch comic book content where somebody spends the whole time complaining about what they don't like and sort of working up their audience into sort of like a tizzy about what they don't like, it just always confuses me. Like, it just seems really miserable. Like to wake up and make a video, you know, video, anything that's not, even live streams, you have, you know, quite a bit of prep work. But like that, to edit a video, that means you spend a couple hours with it. Most people have scripts. So like that's a lot of time to sort of fixate on stuff that makes you unhappy. But I guess that's what sells. So, and you know, some of those people make a lot of money on YouTube and don't have to have a day job, so good for them. Like, they're getting their bag. Good for them. Yeah, see, that's way more than I need, but hopefully people like that. Colorado. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it's from Death on the Nile. Yeah, Frank Miller in general, as he gets older, for me, there's like his Daredevil run is really good. I quite enjoy it. Even though it's kind of like dark at times. But again, there's still there's a little bit of hope in that Daredevil run. It just feels like Frank Miller has become more cynical over the years, and it shows in his work. And again, for me, cynical doesn't work as well for superhero stuff. Some people it does. Some people like that. So I'm glad he's making something that people who enjoy that enjoy. So everyone should be able to find a comic book they like. It's not for me. Nice. Very. Oh, that looks. I'm looking at it on camera. It looks pretty good. So. How was that? I really like casually comics. Sasha is. I really like how she covers comics. It's really clear Sasha loves comic books, and she tends to talk about, which even when it's sort of like old Lois Lane, all the old stuff that kind of doesn't. It's technically kind of bad. Like she has such an affection for it and talks from a place of like she enjoys what she reads. So I like her content a lot. She's probably one of the only comic book channels I watch with any regularity. She also likes a lot of the same, like she also does videos on old Supergirl and Wonder Woman and sort of desperate, insecure Lois Lane comics of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So, she's one of my favorite comic channels. It's my dream to one day be big enough on YouTube that I can invite her on a Sunday to color with me. And color like some Supergirl or something. See if I can find some Lois Lane. But no, she makes really good content. I will not watch her stuff for like 2 or 3 months, and then I'll just spend a weekend catching up on everything she's made. Hello. Thank you for popping in to say hello. I lurk all the time, so I usually try to pop in and say hello, but I often am watching, so. I did, and I liked it. There were a few things I didn't care for, but I liked it overall. Thought it was fun. I hear they're gonna make Supergirl angsty and like a party girl. I don't know how I feel about that, but I also know that's how she's sort of portrayed now in comics. I prefer sort of 70s, 80s Kara Zor-El, but everyone do you. I did like the Superman movie though, and I hope we get more of those. So, and then Derek is a member. So I think all of the members have popped in today, except yeah, I think they're all here. So sorry, Andrew, one last time.
Bring out the olive. 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 Bring out the olive.
And enough champagne to fill the Nile.
There we go. All right. It's silly, y'all, but you know, at the same time, it's enjoyable. So yeah, now we're just doing the. You guys are getting to see like dirt and smoke today. Isn't it exciting? No, this is for me. This is actually the fun part of doing pages. Is sort of all of the little bits of it. As a kid, I would just do like. As a kid, I would have just done Golden Girl, her horse, and then Dragon Queen and her horse. I actually like now doing the full page. And the horses are the most expensive of the Golden Girl toys now to find. So if you are looking to collect Golden Girl, the horses are the most difficult ones to find. And to not spend a lot of money. Those in the palace. So I've got one of the Palace of the Gems on my watch list, but I don't think I'll ever spend $700 for a toy. Although I say that, and I think I did one of the crowd funds I did. I think Eternia was like $700, so I'll never spend $700 again on a toy. And my Eternia is still in the box, so I get to set that up this year though, once I get to that side of the collection room. That's going to be set up so like right where I'm pointing, right in front of me is where Eternia will be. And so I'll be able to look at it while we sit here and chat during streams and think, wow, that was a lot of money I spent on that toy. It looks great. No, it's been pretty cool setting up the collection room. Slowly but surely, putting all these old toys together is really. I put the Annie, the 1982 Knickerbocker World of Annie mansion together last week, and it's made with a lot of white plastic that is super brittle. It was so stressful putting that together. I was afraid I was gonna, and some of it you have to snap, like snaps into place, but like you have to be very firm with it. And I was just like, oh my god, I'm gonna break this vintage toy. I'm gonna break it, and then it's gonna be ruined. And I've wanted this toy for like 40 years, and I finally have it and can set it up. But I didn't break it, so it worked out. But it's stressful. So I will once, for those who care about that side of what I do on the channel, there will be some videos put up, probably right before Christmas, because I'll have enough by then that we can do a pretty decent tour. I got more shelves coming this week because I didn't like some of my older shelves. So I'm just going to get rid of these. And so the Buy Nothing people came last week and picked up the shelves I got rid of. And the new ones will be here. And I'll set those up. So. Uh-oh. Sight beyond sight. Welcome. And Andrew, you know what time it is?
Bring out the off. Bring out the off. Bring out the off.
And enough champagne to fill the Nile.
There we go. I think that's everyone though, Andrew. I think everyone who is subscribed, every channel member has now popped into the chat. So I think we're done. I just know because you're hungover, it's probably even more overwhelming. Sorry, Andrew. Oh, there we go. It does, well, and that's exactly why it's here. So, for those who do wonder about the olives, Cobweb Collector hasn't popped in. He's the only member left who hasn't popped in yet, but he's probably asleep because he has night shifts. But on Instagram, myself, Cobb, Kenzo, Alec, a couple people, we share reels way too much. And I think it was Cobweb who sent it. Cobb sent it to me. And the old Maury clip. And it unlocks the core memory of watching that back when it was like an episode. I used to watch way too much Maury. Maury, Ricky Lake, and Springer. I spent way too much time watching those. But I remembered the Olive Lady from watching it and just thinking, this has to be fake. And Maury would often get, like, people would come on and pretend that they had stuff going on a lot of those shows. And you would see the same people, you know, from show to show. With, like, different reasons they were on the show. And they'd wear wigs and glasses or whatever. But it was, like, the same people. And anyway, so I remember the Olive Lady, and it just cracked, even though, like, allegedly she's horribly traumatized by olives. But it's not necessarily her trauma that was hilarious. It's that she breaks down why this is so traumatic for her, why it upsets her. And the more he screams, bring out the like the worst thing you could do. And it's sort of the over the topness of how he screams, bring out the olives. And then she screams and she takes off running to escape the olives. And then so I just, of course, what happens when you see a reel that cracks you up, you send it to everybody. And like a week after that, Kenzo sent a picture of himself at the grocery store with a jar of olives, like fake crying or whatever. It just cracked me up. So it became a thing, and we did memes, and here we are. And then the Gal Gadot is just because her bad acting has really been giving me life the last few weeks. Despite me really liking her in the first Wonder Woman movie. And she's probably, like, honestly, probably a nice person in real life, but it's just funny to me. It's just funny. We're allowed to have fun. But yeah, So that's the origin of the olives and enough champagne to fill the Nile. But I also love the Death on the Nile movie, so. I like all this Agatha Christie. That's my old lady thing that I've had since I was like 10. My grandmother had an entire shelf of Agatha Christie's. And I would read them when I would go there in the summer. And she didn't, I mean, like my grandma, she was an army, she started as an army secretary back in the 50s, when it was not common for women to work. And over the decades worked her way up through the like secretary pool to where when she retired in the late 90s, she was the senior administrative assistant to the general of the base where she worked. So like she was there so long she was no longer a secretary, she'd become an administrative assistant. And retired, like I would go spend summers and there's always the bring your kid to work, so she'd bring the grandkids. And one of the last time I went for it, I was like probably a junior in high school. I was sitting in her, and her office was like the outer office before you get to the general. And she was off running an errand. I was just sitting in her office playing computer games because the Army has really good computer games for the time. Now it would be basic, but back then it was pretty revolutionary. And I was playing a computer game, and the general comes out. And just just starts talking to me and stuff. And he's like, your grandmother keeps this place running. He's like, I specifically asked for her whenever I got this promotion because, like whatever he had done before, she worked in the office adjacent to him for whoever her boss was at that point. And it was really interesting, like, to hear that, But all that said, she didn't have a lot of joy in life. Worked really hard, had a pretty hard life. So, but there's also not a lot when you're a teenager in the late 80s, early 90s, that you have in common with your grandma. And two things: when she was a kid, she loved Wonder Woman comics. And she read Agatha Christie. So we could always talk Wonder Woman, and we could always talk Agatha Christie because I started reading those. So anyway, Death on the Nile I went and saw because she's been gone for a couple years now. But it's one of the ways, like I stay close to her is I still reread some of the Agatha Christie books, and I watch the movies. And so anyway, I went and saw Death on the Nile. I liked it, although Gal Gadot, her delivery is not. Again, it ain't the best. But I think I laughed in the audience when she delivered that one. It's also the only one there watching it, so. But she's also richer and prettier than I'll ever be, so it's okay for us to laugh just a little about her bad line delivery. She's definitely laughing all the way to the bank. All right, let me catch up on the. Oh, Talk Soup was so good. I liked Sally Jesse. I wasn't as big. It was like if she was on, I would watch it, but I didn't go out of my way. Interestingly, I met Sally Jesse at one point. She's super. I don't know. I can't remember if she's still with us or not. She was really nice. So she was a nice person. Very friendly. Very much like personable. I guess that's the word. So yeah. I've not actually, with the soup, there was nobody who hosted it that I didn't like. I think that Tosh person is on it now, but I haven't watched it since the Tosh person, so me saying there's never been somebody on Talk Soup or the soup that I didn't like doesn't include that Tosh person if he's on it, because I haven't watched it since, I think Aisha Tyler hosted it, and that was the last time I've watched it, so. I liked her. I think she's funny, so. Yeah, some people are. I think she's just a terrible actress. Like, but I mean, for some people, they're making fun of the accent. It's hard not to do an impersonation without doing the accent, though. So, most of what I've seen, people are making fun of how she looks dead behind the eyes, how bad the line delivery is, etc. She was so bad in the Snow White movie, but it was also fun. That like I found it high comedy. She was so bad. I also appreciate campy stuff, though, so she very much could just pivot into doing more camp, where it's like the whole fact that she's not a great actress would liven things up a lot. I do think there are some people who make fun of the accent, which, like, it's hard to sometimes tell which is which. You know, because there's no way to do an impersonation of her without doing the accent. But for me, it's just the bad acting. I also realized that, like, I used to think the reason it was Gal and not Gail was because of her accent. And then somebody was like, no, it's pronounced Gal, even if you don't have the accent. So I was like, oh, okay. So Gal Gadot. And then it sounds like you're making fun of the accent, even though you're technically not. But yeah, there are some people who just make fun of the accent, but she's just not a very good actress. That's also been way more, though, lately in movies she did. It's also could be that she's just not enjoying doing movies anymore. Because I feel like in her earlier movies, you know, people talk about how she sort of is dead behind the eyes, and it's like, I didn't notice that in her earlier stuff. But Snow White, it was really, she was also probably just in Snow White to get that paycheck, so. Which, don't blame her. If somebody said, hey, here's $2 million, come do this movie, you probably don't give any cares about. I would certainly be there, and I definitely cannot act. And so, just saying, Walt Disney, if you're watching and you want to put me in a movie, I will come. You know, and I won't even ask for 2 million or whatever. I would do it for 500,000. So I will come and be equally bad in your movie. Nobody will watch it, but at the same time, I'll do it. I will do it. All right, let's see. Yeah, that's what's weird is that they made her audition for Snow White. If it's true, I don't know. Like, I've heard that, but I don't know. It's hard to say, but if they made her audition for it. Yeah, like if they made her audition for it and the line deliveries were that bad, like who lost the role? Or is it just a thing where they made her audition for it? They're like, it'll be fine. You know. I think my favorite live action Evil Queen was in the 90s. A Snow White movie with Sigourney Weaver as the Evil Queen. And, you know, Sigourney Weaver is probably one of my favorite actresses. Like, she's really good in most stuff. But I also don't know how I feel about all these live action Disney. I don't know that we need live action Disney movies. Like, the original cartoon Snow White is just Snow White. Like, I don't know that we needed a remake. I definitely know the actress. Is it Rachel Ziegler? I think that's her name. Like, I know people were sort of being really rude about her in it, and it's like I didn't. You know, like the stuff. Some of their comments about how she looked and it's like she doesn't have any say over that. That's the art direction. That's the director. Like, she shows up, she gives her line, she does what she can. So it was really weird, like, you know, that her performance was fine. Like, I didn't find her acting bad. You know, you can't critique costumes that she's in when she doesn't. You know, anyone who knows how movies work, she didn't pick those costumes. She didn't pick the makeup look. Like, that's all the studio. That's your director, your art director, your makeup artist. And so, her acting, that's on her. And I thought she was fine. It just, I don't know. It was just a weird. It was just an odd take on the character of Snow White in the movie, and the whole thing felt weird. And I really wanted to like it. I really wanted it to be good. But I also am pretty much done with the concept of live action Disney movies. I'm going to keep watching the old cartoons. I think Disney has gotten so lost in franchise and their intellectual properties that we keep just dumping really bad retreads. Alright, my blue is no longer of this earth, so you get a replacement that is either cloud blue or powder blue. Let's figure it out. Yeah, cloud blue. Okay. Luckily, I have plenty of cloud blue. Yeah, so, yeah, it made a lot of money, but it also wasn't great. Oh yeah, politics are there. Yeah, there are people who don't at all want that because of her personal politics. But again, at the end of the day, that has nothing to do with the movie itself. She doesn't have pull like that. Yeah. Hmm. Let's see, where's it at? Yeah, it's I don't know. And so this is probably where I'm a bad person, but I've never seen either Lilo, and I haven't seen the original Lilo and Stitch. Um, but it did. It made billions of dollars, so they're just gonna keep going, no matter how many sort of Snow Whites and Dumbos and like they've made money on a couple of them, so we're just gonna keep getting them. I don't know. I've been way less excited about any movies coming out in a while because it's just all this sort of same stuff. I went and saw Sinners. Yeah, that was this year, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. I had fun with it. It was nice to see a sort of a scary movie that wasn't like a sequel or a retread that felt like 30 other movies I've seen. So I liked Superman, even though technically that is a reboot. I'm a little bit more forgiving with superhero movies just because, Superman's been around, what, 80, 90 years now? But I don't know. I wish Disney would get back to making new stuff. We wouldn't have The Lion King, we wouldn't have The Little Mermaid, we wouldn't have had Beauty and the Beast if they hadn't have started making new stuff. See, and I don't even remember that, so that does in fact tell me how badly they did. There we go. We have fairly decent. Oh, we've reached the point where my camera is trying to focus on people that aren't there yet. There we are. That sort of helps. All right, see if I go in and just quickly do her face, the camera will chill out some. All right, that's a little better. Oh, StreamYard. It's like I can do anything when I'm not on StreamYard and it will just stay focused on the page, but StreamYard, for whatever reason, takes over the camera and keeps trying to focus, or will go out of focus trying to find a person's face. Can't find anywhere to disable that, which is another reminder I need to figure out some service that isn't StreamYard. At least for this kind of streaming. All right. I liked Encanto. I didn't realize that they're. I'll have to check that out because I liked that movie quite a bit. I thought that was good. I for some reason didn't realize that was yeah, no, I liked that one. No worries, Hella Geek. Glad you're here now. Lovely to see you. I hope you had a good Halloween. Hella Geek will be my guest on, what day is it? Let me look at the calendar really quick. The 16th of this month. So Sunday, November 16th, we'll be here and we'll be coloring G.I. Joe. So, which is your reminder, go to Hella Geek's channel and watch his short, The Baron, which was his, I'm going to assume that was your Halloween offering, where he cosplays the Baroness from G.I. Joe as the Baron. It's pretty good. When you are here, we will talk acting and various credentials because I realized I've seen some of your work. So back in the days where I used to watch daytime a lot more. So it'll be fun to chat. Hella Geek did. Well, the Baron, it's obviously like gender swapped, but it was really good. It was a great, we'll call it a trailer because it was not quite long enough to be a short movie, but it was good. Like, I enjoyed it. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, I was super glad that we got the hour this morning. It's my favorite part of the fall is that we get that hour back. All right, I think our smoke is good. Well, our dust, our dirt, but I think that works. All right, so now we need to do the wall. I'm just going to use a yellow on it. I've got about 20 minutes left, so obviously we're not going to finish this today. but we're going to get as much of it as we can in the next 20 minutes. We can get all of the background. It'll go pretty quick when it's time to finish it. And if I'm not traveling next weekend, so that's still kind of up in the air. We'll do a whip and I'll finish this up. And if not, my next whip episode, we'll start with this and then work through some of the other stuff, because I have quite a bit of stuff that's backing up. Let's see. Yep, and this is November, so. Next month for Christmas, I will for the solo live streams will do it'll either be Charlie Brown, some Christmas stuff, or Nightmare Before Christmas. I've not yet figured out which of the two, so we still have a couple weeks before I need to decide, but it'll be one or the other. And either way, I've got content from both movies that will drop in December. We've got comic book flip throughs for both of those properties. So. We'll be doing the Holiday Upright. No, not at all. I'm going to assume that Ben-Hur is part of probably what inspired them to do the chariot race. Yeah, and pretty much any time after that movie came out, if there's a chariot race, that's what it's going to sort of remind anyone of. But yeah, the chariot race is, so the story of Golden Girl is that there's this kingdom that's sort of the center of the kingdoms. And the king who rules it has two daughters, Dragon Queen and another daughter named Solaria. And Solaria is the head of the Guardians of the Gemstones. And Dragon Queen is evil and Solaria is good, and she's jealous. And Dragon Queen is jealous of her. So Dragon Queen and the other villains, Wild One, Moth Lady, gosh, who am I forgetting? And Voltara, the Vulture Lady, team up and they try to steal the magical gem that Solara protects as sort of the leader of the Guardians of the Gemstones. And to save everyone, Solaria jumps into a bottomless pit, taking the gem with her. So the other Guardians are like, well, none of us can be leader. We need to have games to determine who the new leader of the Gemstone Guardians will be. Very Wonder Woman contest. And then Golden Girl, that's her name. Her name is Golden Girl. It's not like Denise or anything. It's just Golden Girl. Leaves her tribe in the desert and finds a magical gem in a cave. And then Solaria appears to her in a dream. And then she meets Olympia, the last of the magical unicorns. And she goes to Argonia just in time to join the tournament to become the new ruler, which Dragon Queen's trying to be the ruler so that she doesn't have to she and the barbarians don't have to go to war against Argonia. She can just become the leader of the Gemstone Guardians. But Olympia and Golden Girl show up and they win all the contests, including the final chariot race. And she becomes the new leader, and then they're mortal enemies. So the story is a little bit sort of told from a lot of different sort of archetypes and stories. Because it is very sort of Wonder Woman meets Ben-Hur meets Conan meets He-Man. So to a degree, that might be some of what hurt it, was that it's a little bit of everything without necessarily being, at the time it hit, DC Comics had Amethyst Princess of Gemworld, where there were all these different kingdoms. And each one of them had their own gemstone, and there were different magics and attributes. And that had premiered in 82, 83. So definitely would have been. Kenner actually had an Amethyst Princess of Gemworld toy line that they were going to unveil, but at the toy fair where they brought it, they ended up not doing it. Because it was the same year Golden Girl and She-Ra were there, and they were just like, oh, it's too much like these other two properties. So, and I know that thanks to Adam at the Battleground blog. He got me to an interview with one of the creators of Amethyst Princess of Gemworld, who was talking about that. So his theory was that Golden Girl and She-Ra ripped off Amethyst Princess of Gemworld because they're, unicorns and Pegasuses and gems and whatnot. I think it's way more just sort of developing, similar development, because the same with Golden Girl and She-Ra, there's very little indication that they were aware of each other until they were, which is pretty far in production. I think just with all the sword and sorcery stuff happening, somebody wanted to tap into the sword and sorcery for girls market that was vastly untapped. Because remember, Teela was one of the best-selling figures in Masters of the Universe. And there were a lot of girls going to the toy aisle to get Teela. Which is why Mattel even considered doing She-Ra, was because they were basically missing money from the demographic. And if Mattel realized that, obviously Galoob would, Kenner would have known. So I don't necessarily think that they ripped off Amethyst Princess of Gemworld. I think it was just sort of how it happens. Similar minds think alike. And I'm not one to, think lightly of Mattel and what they're willing to go to. We all know the story about Gem and the Holograms. How they heard that was coming out and then went out of their way to rush out Barbie and the Rockers. And so, if they had found out about Golden Girl and the Gemstone Guardians, they probably would have rushed out a toy line, but it was well in development going back to when they were getting those numbers in 82, 83 about how well Teela was selling. And so it certainly probably helped push it faster if they found out, but it would have happened regardless. Have a good day, Derek. Thanks for popping in. Yeah, I've liked, the original Thundercats has a lot of potential, but there was a lot for me that didn't quite land with that original series. I did like a lot of what the reboot did. I felt like it helped ground it more. So I don't know. I think Platinum is sort of a sexy sex bomb type of dude. I think that would work. Surprised they haven't. That would be really easy to do, even without, sort of going to one of the alternate Earths. All right, we're at 8 minutes left, so I'm gonna finish finish the skin tones out here so that I do not have to figure out with these three what I was planning later. I'm gonna come back because I will forget, and if I write it down, I will lose whatever I write it down on. So it's best just to finish the skin tones. All right. I think we got 6 minutes, so we should wrap this up. I'm definitely not going to finish the rest of it today, but we'll get to it next time. And we got most of it, so. Oh yeah, like we'll make up elaborate backstories for them. I'll tell you about them next time. I think platinum is the strongest still, so a metal. All right, let's see. Okay, so next Sunday, I do not yet know if I'll be here streaming. If so, it will be by myself, and we'll finish this one out. Just because, like I said, I might be traveling. And if that's the case, I will be here next on the 16th with Hella Geek. Let's see. Where is, there we go. Here's the calendar of events. All right, so tomorrow I have a flip through video dropping. It's a vintage Masters of the Universe coloring book. I've got a couple shorts this week, 2 Goonies shorts, Brand and Steph. Advanced Dungeons and Dragons short for Alcorn. Friday, a Masters of the Universe color and chill. Saturday is Barbie Day. We've got the Barbie World of Fashion catalog that will be dropping, as well as a Barbie short, Ballerina Barbie. And that one was released for members last month, so everyone else can watch it on Saturday. And the next Sunday will be a short for Black Canary by Dick Giordano. Woo. All right. So that's the next week of content. Thank you everyone for hanging out. I appreciate it. Thanks for being here. Let's see. Don't forget to like. If you're not subscribed, you should subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. And if you'd like to help the channel grow, there are channel membership options. Check those out. Love to have you, but also get it. The economy is tough. So, I know it's time to go.
Kalel, no. Kalel, no.
Here we go. But no matter what, there will always be
And enough champagne to fill the Nile.
and at some point I will do a stream where I drink champagne and we get sassy. So anyway, thank you very much, CJ. Hopefully they'll look even better once we get to finish them. So exactly, Malibu Barbie. That's not who I was. They had to go. If you know, you know. Anyway, on that note, thank you everyone. I appreciate you. I'm gonna go have some lunch. I suggest you all go do something fun. I know Highly Articulated will be streaming later today. Adam, I'll probably be in chat there. Brick Something will be streaming, and I will probably be in chat there. And obviously, I'll probably see you in the Geek Dad Life chats. So, anyway, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate you all. And as always, I leave you with this important question.
I haven't made up my mind yet. Incidentally, which one of you bitches is my mother?